before I knew it, I'm kind of sitting in the office of a music supervisor who's really well known, and the scariest moment. But then he's playing my songs right there with him, and this is all stuff I made in my parents' basement.
All right, so welcome to the prolific Super Producer Podcast. I got it right this time.
Let's go.
And we're going to be covering Nathan's story today, and really we're going to be diving into how much effort it takes to produce pro music. And so we're going to be taking a look at Nathan's story and how he was able to go from not being able to produce pro music, doing music as a hobby, to producing music at a pro level that he ultimately got paid for and supported his family with through sync licensing. So we're going to be diving into that story here in just a minute. Nathan,
my man,
tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did your music journey start? What's your origin story?
Oh, yeah, the origin story. Marvel style. Okay, so my origin story, man, where did it start? So I grew up in a very musical household, for sure. Like, my dad was a songwriter, but more in the gospel niche. I grew up listening to him, creating music all the time. He's an awesome piano player, awesome singer. And so I just grew up inside a household that had a lot of music in it, but I don't think I necessarily identified with many of the music that was going on until I was probably, 10 years old is probably the first thing when I started to have any kind of inkling on music. And I only know that because for my 10th birthday, my parents bought me a pack of drum lessons to go learn how to play drums. And it's not because I was playing drums before, it's because I was banging all over anything and everything, and especially inside the car. Apparently my mom had to remind me of this. Like, I was just banging all over the van whenever a song came on. So whenever a song came on, I would just start like hitting and moving and stuff, and they're like, we got to get this kid to stop hitting everything and just go have him hit drums, you know? So that's where it started. I was a drummer first. So any fellow drummers out there, I salute you, you know?
Brave parents getting you that.
Yeah.
Starting at 10?
Oh, I know.
Man,
they were really the best. And I got to say, too, I think that was definitely in my household, too, was supportive parents, supportive family that wouldn't shoot you down. And I had extended family members and friends that I would have considered family that would take the place of that kind of shooting down music and stuff. But it never existed in my immediate family, which I'm just very thankful for as I look back, you know? But yeah, so it started with drums. Drums were first. And then a few years later, my parents got divorced. And so as they got divorced, it was kind of this kind of wild situation. I just wasn't really, all of us siblings, handled it in our own way. And the way that I handled it was like, I didn't want to go to school. I really didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to be around people. I didn't want to do anything like that. I was about 12 or about to turn 13 when all this was going on, so like old enough to kind of get it, like to sense the emotions that my parents were feeling, but young enough still to where I couldn't fully flesh it out, you know what I mean? And I couldn't really articulate it, and I had to deal with it in certain ways. And so my parents thankfully were like, okay, well, you can be homeschooled. I was homeschooled, and it was this online thing that I would work through at my own pace, and my dad would check my progress. And what happened was eventually my dad still having to work, and my siblings would be at school. So I would be at home by myself doing school on the computer, doing this online schooling. And slowly but surely, I can't remember the first time it happened, but I just remember my dad letting me use his computer because he got a new one. And on the computer, I found this software called Mixcraft. I don't even know if Tyson, if you know what this is.
Oh yeah,
you do? No way. Okay.
I've never used it, but I do know of Mixcraft.
Okay, I have to I got to do a Google search after this to see if it's even a thing anymore. But it was a DAW, like it was a digital audio workstation, and it just had all these preloaded sounds in there. It had loops and stuff like that, and so I started to mess with loops all day, every day. It got to the point. I think I can say this. I don't think anybody can come get me now. My parents know, so it's probably fine. But I stole my dad's password to log into his backend in the online schooling curriculum, and I would give myself, good enough grades to pass. just so that I could spend the whole day on this computer with this software that I just discovered. So, I was doing some school, but I was really more I was doing some stuff, but I just wasn't doing the full stuff. And so I would cheat my way through that so that I could just do music all day, every day. And so I would mess with loops, and then I'd go make a loop on the computer, put headphones on with my laptop, and try to play drums with it.
I guess that's way better than playing World of Warcraft or something. At least you're trying to do something productive.
It's true. Sure. There's a lot of, when my parents finally found out, right, I think they were like, okay, well, at least it could have been worse. This could have been a lot worse. Hopefully that still means I passed 7th and 8th grade. If anyone hears this.
They're not going to take away your high school diploma for that.
They're not going to take that away. Oh my goodness. But yeah, that was kind of my world for a while, was all through middle school. I was doing that. And I mean, it really enabled me, man. I was doing like 8 hours a day of just messing with loops, messing with music, and doing all this kind of stuff. And eventually, as my parents found out, I had to go to public school. I had to go back to school. I had to go in person. I couldn't be homeschooled anymore. And so in high school, right, 9th grade, high school, I had to go to a public school. And by that point, I was already messing with kind of trying to do all the elements myself, right? So like I started on drums, then I got access to a recording software and saw that there were loops in there. And so now I'm kind of messing with production. I'm messing with song arrangement. I'm learning how to affect things inside of a DAW while being able to do drums too. So you can already see like things kind of starting to stack up with each other to take on this whole bedroom producer persona, right? Super producer of wearing all the hats. It started all the way back there. And so then all through high school, I just honed in and developed things even more. And then eventually I just started singing. Like I started singing, but I would sing. I wouldn't let anybody know. I mean, for the longest time, like I would try to get home early from school. I would have to walk home or something, like I would try to get home early from school so that I could practice singing with no one else in the house. Or I would sing under my desk or in my closet. Like it's like I really didn't want people to hear me singing. I didn't want people to hear me singing until I felt like I sounded good enough. So there was like this weird kind of undercover practicing going on of wearing all these different hats. So all throughout high school, I'm continuing to mess with software. My dad buys me Logic Pro for my birthday one year, and I forget what birthday, but it was in high school, and that changed everything because then it just had way more functionality, and I learned how to record things, and I learned how to record audio and keyboards, and that was the foundational era of me actually writing songs because I was able to and like to record them and affect them. Man, that I love that time period because I just got to hone all of that stuff and hone that craft. So during high school, I was a total theater kid. I was kind of like forced into it because my drama teacher basically said, you need to audition for a play or I'm failing you. And she said it in jest, like she was like kind of joking, but at the same time, I think it was enough for me to be like, oh, I don't want to fail. So I auditioned and got the part and the lead part in the play. And then I was just kind of doing plays and stuff all through the rest of high school, but I'd never done a musical. And so the first musical that they did that I was coerced, literally people tricked me and pulled me into an audition room for The Sound of Music, which we're doing in high school. And I had to sing, right? And so like I did this song from a musical that like my dad had helped me prep. And it's the first time I ever sang in public. And I hated it because I was like forced into a room. I mean, it was like awful. You know what I mean? But all my fellow thespians, my fellow theater people, they're just looking out for me. Like I guess they saw something and they thought that I could do it. And that was their way of tough love. It was like forcing it out of me. So after that, that was my first experience of singing live. And it was the first time I ever like let my voice be heard by other people. And it wasn't as bad as I thought. I think that's the big thing. It didn't freak me out as much as I thought after that. And so really after that, even though I didn't really, enjoy the musical theater part, right? Like I didn't really, want to keep doing that. I am thankful for that production because it's like, it helped me actually sing for the first time in front of people. I then took that confidence back into making songs and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I that was the come up, I guess, was all middle school into high school. And that's where I was doing a lot of reps. I know we were talking about like last episode, like just making songs and just, staying curious and just, committing to doing a volume of work. There was a lot of stuff that I did in that time period and kind of those, formative years. So
that reminds me a little bit of, do you know Ryan Tedder's story at all?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. For anybody who doesn't know Ryan Tedder's story, Ryan Tedder is the lead singer for One Republic, and then he also has written a ton of number one hits like Halo for Beyonce and a bunch of other ones. Yeah. But I love his story though because he was very similar to Nathan. He was in theater when he was in high school, and he was very into it. Like he was, that was his dream to be on Broadway, and his drama teacher took him aside one day and said, "Hey, you're not that good of an actor, but your voice is something special. You should lean into that."
Wow.
And so he leaned that direction, leaning into developing his voice and developing his songwriting and going that direction rather than trying to pursue something that may not have actually worked out for him, given that he wasn't a very good actor. So
wow.
I just think there's some parallels here from your story. Is like it wasn't quite the same, but it's still like drama was a way to push you further on your music journey that really leveled your skills up to a point of, I also want to take that away is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were not that confident with your music, but you had the skills, like you knew how to sing. But after you were pushed into that situation where it basically forced you to be like, oh, I have to be like somewhat confident in my singing voice in order to be in this play.
Yeah.
All of a sudden then you took that back to your own music as well, that confidence. I just know from experience, like that confidence is 50%, if not more, of the battle, especially when it comes to singing.
Oh my
and
goodness.
so if you can sing something confidently, it's going to come across as legitimate. People are going to feel that.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel confident, especially on stage, right? If you get on stage and you don't feel confident, then it makes everybody else really uncomfortable. But if you just go up there, you act like an idiot, you feel like an idiot, but then you do it confidently, then everybody's like, oh, you're the coolest thing in the world.
That is so true. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I think that's just like a huge takeaway, though, from your story is just having that confidence to step out there in ways that you know you're going to be stretched. Like I've had very similar experiences myself.
There it is.
And you always see just the most tremendous growth from those specific opportunities. And ultimately, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but that's probably a huge reason why, you were able to pursue music to the extent that you have.
No, 100%. I mean, that was the moment. That was the moment I had to get over. And I think I would have had to face that moment at some point anyway. It was just kind of forced out of me, which, hey, maybe what's the saying, trial by fire, like just get in there and just see if, jump in the ocean, see if you float. I'm thankful for that. I don't have any resentment against any of my fellow drama people back then. Oh man.
Tell us more about, so you were up through high school basically, and you've basically refined your skills to a point where you're confident producing your own music, singing on your own music, and basically, being the super producer for yourself. How do you then take that as this raw passion for music and music production, and then turn that into a profession where you were actually able to earn money from that, buy food for your family? Yeah,
100%. To kind of bridge that gap, I guess there's a series of events, I guess, that happened. So all that time that I'm making songs, it's funny, I was never realizing that I was a super producer. I was never realizing that I had the ability to, it's like I knew I could make a song and do all the parts and wear all the hats, but I wouldn't say that's what I did. You know what I mean? To me, it was just making a song. I thought that this is how everybody does it. My eyes were later open to the whole world of, well, no, there's usually a team. Like there's an artist, and then there's a songwriter, and there's a producer, and there's a mixing engineer, there's a recording engineer, there's a mastering engineer, there's people that distribute. It's like there's this whole team that my eyes, I guess, were just totally closed to. And I was just thinking this is what everybody does. Everyone just opens their laptop and just, oh, I want the piano. Oh, I want to add some drums. Oh, I'm going to sing over that, do some backgrounds. So like that whole skill set was there, and it wasn't until. Speaking of acting, right, like with Ryan Tedder's background, so I was able to do a couple just small roles, and there was just one, a film, like it wasn't anything crazy, and then a TV show, just a couple episodes, and nothing crazy there. It was just kind of a job, and it was a way to actually my good buddy at the time, he helped me kind of get into that world because he was acting, and so I got to hang with him and do that, and so that's how that all happened. So I booked this role, and the producer came over to me. They just found out that I make music, and so she asked me. She was like, "Could you write a song for the film?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally. Okay. Like, what are you thinking about?" And she was like, "Well, like you've read the script. You know what the movie's about. Like, let's make a song to kind of capture what the movie's about, and we're going to use it as the end credits song." So I was like, "Oh, okay, wow." And so that was the first moment where I kind of like had connected the dots between, using my skills as a service to help fill a hole for someone else, right? Where they're like, "Hey, we're looking for something." They saw me as the answer to that, and that was the first connection of, oh, could I keep doing this? Like, how else could I do this? And so I remember like running home after driving home. We were driving home. It felt like I was running, so excited, and I was staying with my parents at the time because the film shot like just an hour away, and so it was a quick drive. But I remember coming to my parents' house. I just had a laptop. It was just in a closet, literally in a closet, and I'm programming and making a song, and I did it all in that one night and then sent it to the producer the next day. And they were like, oh my goodness, we love this. This was it. And so that was the first moment for me of like, oh, I didn't know this existed before. To me, this is way cooler than acting. Like, I want to do this. How could I make songs for people for projects? And so they let me do another song in the film, I guess, because they liked the first one. And then after that, I just had some help. So that same buddy who had helped me, right, get into kind of the acting world, he kind of reached out. He was just a good friend, man. He was just a good friend. And he reached out and he tried to tap his connections to see if there's anybody in music who would just sit with me, who would like listen to me, and he had a really good reputation. And so before I knew it, I'm kind of sitting in the office of a music supervisor who's really well known. And the scariest moment, this is probably the second scariest moment, right? Like, you're talking about fear, how it can be a catalyst for growth and for doing something with your art, right? First moment was being forced to sing in a room with like teenagers and stuff. And then the second one is this moment right here where I flew to LA to have this meeting with a music supervisor, and he's playing my music right there with me. He waited. He didn't listen to my, like, he clicked through enough because, he wanted to, like, I guess, make sure I was legit before meeting with me, right? But then he's playing my songs right there with him, and this is all stuff I made in my parents' basement, you know what I mean? Like, this is just all music, and he was impressed, and so he helped connect me with a thing called, like, it's like a sync agent is basically what it is. It's like a company that will represent artists to, take their catalog of songs. They don't own any of their songs or anything, but they'll take a cut if any of the songs that they represent get placed. So it's a specific thing for video games, TV shows, movies, commercials, stuff like that. And so I was quickly signed to one of those companies based off of the recommendation of this music supervisor. So really, it's like, I'm looking back and talking out loud now, I'm realizing, man, okay, I had some talent, right? Like, I had developed the skill, but it didn't just come out of nowhere. Like, I worked my butt off and I enjoyed it, but I did so many days like working and practicing different things. And I think that the hard work brought about a product or something in me that then specific people speaking into my life helped push me forward. It's kind of wild, right? Like how, and I'm sure you have similar stuff like in your story too. There's a quote that I am literally blanking on right now.
Luck is where preparation and opportunity meet.
There it is. Yes, 100%.
Like that, yeah.
And that's just what I feel. Totally see that in my story. I see God's hand in my story and just kind of like, placing certain people in my life. But nonetheless, I had to be able to back it up. You know what I mean? Like, a door can be open for you, but you got to be able to walk through it and like put you on. Maybe they'll reach out to you, but you got to be able to show your stuff. Similar to you, Tyson. I mean, we're going to get into your story, I guess, in the next episode. But like with that competition, you know what I mean? How did you win the competition unless you were legit? You know what I mean? And you were only legit because you did all the work. So it's kind of that continuation. That's just really my story of just the slow burn of committing to making music, trying to get better, trying to adjust when I can. And then when opportunities are presented, I felt confident enough to go for it. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that, hey, the door opened for a reason. And so I'm going to do my very best with this next song or this next opportunity. And so, so long story short, to kind of wrap all that up, was signed with a sync agent. And then since that point, periodically get something placed in a TV show like Grey's Anatomy or Shameless, or just did some stuff for CSI, that kind of stuff.
I feel like that's so many people's dreams, is just to have their songs represented in culture, essentially, right? I feel like that's so cool that you have produced music that's, been in film, been in shows, been in these, even more popular shows that everybody recognizes. Like, everybody knows Grey's Anatomy, everybody knows CSI, represent in that way for the bedroom producers everywhere.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, the song that was in Grey's Anatomy and the song that was placed in Grey's Anatomy closed out one of the seasons. It was like the season finale, and they played my entire song.
Which season was it? Do you know?
It was a couple years ago. It was like season. I'll have to look. Well, no, Grey's Anatomy has so many seasons. I don't know. I'll have to look. Maybe we can link it in the show notes or something. But yeah, that song that I did in my parents' basement. It was one of the songs that I had made, just grinding it out, and not even like grinding it out, I guess, necessarily, but just having fun, just making music and committing to finishing the things that I start. And that song had no plugins on it. Literally, I think there was compression and EQ on my vocal, but I just picked a preset. I didn't even know what the heck I was doing. You know what I mean? And like, there's no mixing in that track, or maybe you could argue there is mixing. Maybe Tyson can correct me, because I was doing some volume leveling. Like, but that's all I did. I didn't do anything else. And that track is closing out the end credits of this show. And so anyway, I say that I'm not trying to flex. I'm just trying to say, like, dude, there's hope. Like, oh my goodness, this thing that you're doing in your bedroom, in your basement, is real, and like, there's actual opportunities out there for your music. If I could get a song like placed in a big show that I made in my parents' basement, it's just anybody can, you know?
So I think that there's a couple lessons that I would want to kind of extrapolate from your story. And the first one being kind of reiterating the whole luck is opportunity and preparation meeting. And because you had spent probably thousands of hours minimum
Yeah. Especially
in your
cheating
parents'
through school.
basement. Yeah. I mean, I guess it works. I don't know. I would never have been brave enough to do that. I would be like terrified of changing the grade. Yeah. Anyway, I wish I broke more rules in my younger life. I'll just throw that out.
Hey, there we go. Yeah.
But I'd have a song on Grey's Anatomy.
There it is, man. Break rules. Yeah.
Anyway, the takeaway though is you need to have spent that time. You know, the Rocky. You know, like what's
it's
that?
the montage, right? Yeah.
It's the Rocky montage that you're just like walking through life. You're training.
Yes.
Everybody has that moment. Everybody who has success has something similar in their background. Even though you may not see where your songwriting is going right now or where your production skills are going right now, or you know that they're not at that level, like, and you're just consistently trying, it's okay. Like, you enjoy that part of the journey, because I'm sure that, Nathan, you'd agree that time in your life, you'll always look back with an incredible fondness for that.
100%. Yeah.
I always think there's like basically two types of happiness. There's like the dopamine rush when you eat a cheeseburger, and then there's the more like just set in, like, I am proud of what I have accomplished because I worked really hard for that thing.
Yes.
And there's just no replacing that in your ability to just enjoy those moments and enjoy them after the fact of, yeah, this really sucked in the time, or maybe it was just like I put in a ton of time, and now all of a sudden I can look back with incredible fondness towards that and feel like I really accomplished something. So that was one thing I wanted to pull out. And I think another part of it is that I always like to view music production as kind of a pyramid, where the foundational aspects of the project are always the most critical to get right. Otherwise you can't, build your pyramid up. And I think Nathan's story really exemplifies that, in terms of he had perfected the ability to write songs and produce them. And at the end of the day, he almost didn't even need to know how to mix or master his music, because he achieved industry success even without those skills to an extent.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. You have the background of knowing what really sounded good. And so like there's still somewhat of that skill in there of being able to know how to mix it in a way without even using plugins, though. And that is the epitome, in my opinion, of the mixing skill, because most mixing engineers use as few plugins as possible to get the desired result. The goal is to get to the result. The goal is not to use a lot of fancy tactics and plugins to get there.
That's good.
So a lot of what we try to do and what we're like we learn all these tips and tricks and stuff, but it just confuses us and actually reduces the quality of our music, because simplicity is the highest form of sophistication.
I love it. There we go.
I firmly believe that, and especially when it comes to any music production, the more simple you can make it, the least amount of things you can do to your audio, the better it's really going to sound at the end of the day. Quickly, two other things that we want to cover with you, Nathan, while we have you here.
Yeah.
We want to cover, first of all, what were your biggest roadblocks in your journey of achieving what you've achieved in the music industry? Were there any naysayers, I guess, in your story? Or, because I feel like most musicians and artists have that. There's somebody in their life that's kind of a naysayer saying like, oh, you're never going to make it in music. You're probably not going to be able to earn any money with this, or like, you're never going to be good enough to make it, unquote. Yeah,
100%. I think those people absolutely exist. And I did, I definitely had those people. There was someone who I would have considered like, almost a second mother at one point in my life. And I remember her saying like right to my face, what's all this, music making going to do? What is this all going to do? And so definitely, I think the roadblock is fear. I see that definitely in my story. It's this interesting combo of like fear, but then the resilience to keep going. Like for some reason, I kept going after being scared to sing, right? For anybody to hear me, than to being forced to do it. And I did do it. I didn't refuse or run out of the room. It's like, that's interesting. And then the fear of flying to LA, having my music played right in front of someone who's legit, who's like in the industry. That was freaky, but just being able to stay there, be in the moment, and just be true, you know? So I think the big roadblocks for me would be like fear, and would be the mentality, because there's plenty, I gotta say too, back up, like, yes, I was scared and then overcame it, and scared and overcame it, but I would hate for that to paint a picture of like, that's how I always am. Because it is not true. Oh my goodness, I am not as resilient as it sounds. Like, that's why I say fear is probably the biggest roadblock, because guess what? I crumble to it sometimes, you know? I won't trust my gut. And there's been plenty of times that has bit me in the butt by not trusting my gut, or doing my own sound, or caving to other people's expectations, or doing things the way that other people do them, or the way I think it should be done by other people. I just want to say that, yeah, like fear is the biggest roadblock, but it's also the biggest, I think, launcher into the next level. Something that my wife and I will say around here is that fear gets a voice. It doesn't get a vote. So you're like sitting at the table with your board meeting of like you and your, I don't know. And if you've seen the movie, what's that movie with all the emotions from Disney?
Inside Out.
Inside Out. Oh, great example. You got all your emotions in there, and fear's there, right? Fear can get a voice. Yeah. Tell me what you think about the situation. Tell me what you think. It's good. It can be helpful data. Like, there's a rattlesnake over there. Don't go pet it. You know what I mean? Like, it can be helpful, right? But it just doesn't get a vote. I'm not going to pilot my creativity at the whims of my fear. I'm not going to try not to pilot my life that's fear-based, because I don't, like, who wants to live like that, right? And I know, like, we're all smart enough to know that nothing's going to get done if we don't do anything. I think that's probably the biggest thing, is like overcoming fear and trying not to care so much about what other people think. I think that's another big one. It's like, just, and I would, for a long time, would care what other people think, and would do things the way other people wanted them to be done, and at the cost of my own songs and at the cost of my own creativity. And so I think that those two things, man, caving to other people's expectations and fear, those were the big roadblocks, and still can be the roadblocks that, like, I need to freaking grab and wrestle to the ground every once in a while and be like, you don't control. You don't get to say. You know?
Yeah, definitely. I think that fear can be a great motivator in times, but also, it'll just prevent you from taking those scary opportunities that do exist. Yeah. But you can't let that control you and make your decisions for you. So I think that's super powerful. So appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, last thing, what would you tell your 18-year-old self, knowing what you know now? So if you put yourself in the shoes of somebody who skipped all of school, and gave themselves the good grades, and just spent all their time producing music, what would you tell that person, knowing what you know now?
Man, that's really good. A couple things. First, I would say to jump sooner. I think that's the first thing I would say, is jump sooner. Make a move sooner. You know what I mean? If you don't spend so much time like I did trying to get things perfect before sharing them, because as I've had to learn, right? I'm sure you know this too, Tyson, especially like mixing and mastering. Like, perfect is such a relative term. Like, everyone has a different definition of what sounds good. I was holding myself to such a high standard that I think it kind of cost me the vulnerability to just share where I was at. And maybe because I shared it, I was able to get more reps on battling fear, or I was able to get more reps on getting better at my craft, because I would have just shared where I was at and gotten feedback or something like that. So I think that would be the first one. Like, if you can handle it, right, you can like have some resilience there, like some thicker skin to just be ready. If you're going to share something, make sure you're sharing it with someone that like you would swap places with, or that you trust, or that you feel comfortable with. But share stuff sooner. And at the same time, my advice would be, don't listen to what people say. So that might sound like it like conflicts things, right? Like, share your stuff. Don't be scared to like jump sooner and make moves and put things out there and like let people hear you and stuff like that. But also, while doing that, it's kind of the whole like penguins from Madagascar, you know, smile and nod, boys, or like smile and wave, boys. Like, thanks for your opinion, but I'm like, still trust yourself. And there was actually I'm going to pull it up right now. There's this Instagram post. I was like going through just old Instagram things and like trying to clean stuff up. And I saw this post that I did talking about the song that I was just explaining, the one that was on Grey's Anatomy. Here's what I said about that setup. Being with my family today reminded me where everything started. I found this pic of my come up rig. And this is a term that this mixing engineer, Maddox Chim, coined. He likes to reference his come-up rig. So I found a pic of my come-up rig. And when I was in this basement, I didn't know what I was doing. Like, zero technical knowledge. Knew nothing about mixing or mastering a track or proper levels to track vocals at. My acoustic treatment was the bed to the right. There's just my twin bed right there. This basement is where I started really taking song creation seriously. It's where I learned to trust my gut, to lean into creativity and to try crazy things. It was all feel-based. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was slowly teaching myself how to do all parts of making a song through tons of trial and error. I mean, I didn't care about anything. I was pushing faders and totally wrecking stock plugins, like just tweaking and layering until it sounded right and made my whole body react. Stomach drops and goosebumps were my meters. I learned a lot since then, but this basement is where I made Once in a Life, that track that went on to be the closing song in a season of Grey's Anatomy. And it's humbling because that track doesn't have a shred of proper technique in it. And I'll never take that for granted. Nothing that I know now helped me make that song then. And then the final parting words would be to get in that basement mindset, fellow creator, fellow songmaker right now. Get in that basement mindset. Don't look at the meters every once in a while. Break rules until your stomach drops and the goosebumps hit.
Don't let whatever gear you have, whatever your situation is, don't let that hold you back. Look at Nathan in his basement and just think of that the next time you're actually sitting down to produce a song, because I think that image is super powerful in thinking of all of the gear that you have isn't going to be a limitation for you. In some ways, it's actually a benefit because you can be more creative because you're not using the industry standard stuff. You can use something that in a way that maybe it wasn't really meant to, and just be creative and, like Nathan said, trust your gut. So with that, Nathan, I think we have something to leave people with in terms of if you want next steps, if you want to continue on in your journey in writing and producing songs, what do we have for them?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'm so stoked about this. So if you head to finishsongsguide.com, you're going to find a totally free PDF guide that is literally my process for making a song start to finish. It's just 5 steps. This is how you're going to close the gap in the volume of work that you need to make to just get better. You just need to make more songs and make more songs. So that's what this guide is. It's going to help you make more songs, because I found after making a lot of songs right and struggling to get through a lot of songs and work, like dealing with procrastination and writer's block and all the things, a big antidote is to adjust your workflow. Is to change how you show up when it's time to create, and change how you transition from one part of the process to the next part of the process to keep you in this state of inspiration. So that's why I made this guide, because I had to adjust my workflow, and this is literally my workflow. I'm not holding anything back. It's like 10 pages. You got the whole thing. Print it out if you want. Leave it on your desk. You can work through it to bust out some more songs. So totally free. That's at finishsongsguide.com.
Finishsongsguide.com. Boom. And pick up that guide if you want to produce songs the same way Nathan has and get your songs on famous TV shows like Grey's Anatomy. So make sure that you pick that up. And with that, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, don't forget to leave a review for us to let us know what you want us to talk about. We have a wealth of knowledge through Nathan and a little bit about myself, and we are here to actually serve you and help you produce whatever songs that you are trying to produce at a professional level. You can achieve whatever your goal is in music. So we are here to help you and serve you. But in order to do that, we need to know what you need help with. So go ahead, leave a review, and we will address all of those topics that you leave in the reviews. So appreciate you for tuning in, and we will see you in the next one.